My father, my mother, myself, being a police officer, and that's the only way that you can sort of control the living wages. It's important to have it. I'm also here to tell you, without that, big business is able to break a union, or at least break the union spirit. So you have to have it. I'm definitely for it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I want to make sure these cameras are running, because this is probably going to be the only time over the next 4 weeks that all three of us are going to agree. I too support the Employee Free Choice Act, have voiced my support. I was actually at an event with Patrick about a month ago at the North Side, where I know I stood up, and I'm sure he did after I left, to voice our support for the Employee Free Choice Act and see what it is we can do as local leaders to enact it. We all know now, I think, that Senator Specter has decided to not support it, which is going to make it difficult for its ultimate passage, but nevertheless, we are supportive and look forward. Perhaps the three of us can unite on this issue and try to move some mountains down in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. This question, the recent fatal shooting of 3 police officers by a young man with a substantial arsenal, which he obtained illegally, or legally, rather, as parts of it, unauthorized, has led to renewed calls for more stringent gun control laws. Do you favor any of these, and if so, why? Let's begin with Ms. Robinson on this.
Thank you, Mr. Doss. Now, while what I'm going to say is unpopular, I'm not a member of the NRA, and I'm not one that uses the Second Amendment the way they do. I'm going to tell you that banning guns and the legislation that we're trying to impose and all the crossfires that take place in the arguments is nothing more than a distraction. I'm here to tell you that, guess what? Drugs in our neighborhoods are illegal too, and you still have it. Guns do not kill, people do. And I'm not going to be the poster child for no banning, the red circle and the line going through it against banning AK-47s, but I'm here to tell you that billions of dollars get spent on this legislation. I've watched it. I would much rather have that money in the community now. You get this legislation, where will you be? What will you get? That money pays for people to go to Harrisburg and Washington to argue the case. It doesn't do anything in the neighborhoods. We have children that are dropping out of school, like I said earlier. We have children, African Americans, killing each other. We have people afraid to come out of our homes because of gun violence. Why not put the money in our neighborhoods? Why not take care of our schools? Why not take care of us? Why not? Let's not be victims of political silly season. That's going to be my favorite line. It's when politicians say that they care about you and they talk about banning guns, and it's just a distraction. While I agree that I would like to cut down violence, and I agree that guns shouldn't so easily come into the hands of people, don't waste your time. Don't fall for the distraction. Ask for the money to be spent in the neighborhoods.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I think we can achieve both of what Ms. Robinson is saying, of course, by investing in neighborhoods, but more specifically on this issue, I do disagree with her and agree with Councilman Dowd that stricter gun laws are needed. I was in Harrisburg with the governor a short time ago to talk about the reenactment of the assault weapons ban at the federal government. The numbers do, Carmen, show that when the federal weapons ban was expired in 2004, and then President Bush didn't reenact it, we saw significant increases in the number of AK-47s and assault rifles that were used. When President Clinton in '94 signed it, that number went down. So clearly it does work. So that is one effort that I support. In addition, I also support the governor's efforts to give local municipalities and local governments the opportunity to enact their own ordinance. City Council last year enacted an ordinance that is, of course, in violation of state laws that currently exist. That's why I was in Harrisburg advocating with the governor to get the legislature to give us the ability to do so, because the reality is, and I know Patrick's going to criticize me for not signing that bill, the reality of the situation is whether I signed that bill or I didn't, we could not enforce that law locally. I rather chose to follow the path that the governor did, for example, advocating and asking Congress to do it, just like I now am advocating and asking the legislature to give us the ability locally to enact our local gun ordinance. Because the reality is, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Erie and Scranton and the urban areas and the urban cores throughout this state are much different than the rural counties. And therefore believe that local ability to enact ordinances is important to control the weapons that are in the hands of our criminals right now.
Thank you. Mr. Dowell?
The mayor's right. I am critical of his failure to sign the piece of legislation that council passed. It's a small gun control bill. I myself was not happy with the bill. I myself did not want to pass that bill. I wanted to pass something stronger. And my criticism of the mayor for his failure to sign or to veto, it was not a criticism of his failure to sign. It was a failure to speak to the issue at the time. There was no speaking to the issue. And more importantly, there was no leadership. As the mayor of one of the largest cities in the Commonwealth, one of the most important cities in the country, we need a mayor who's going to take a stand, one way or the other, and say this is where we're going. And I think in the case of gun control, we need someone who's going to stand up and take a lead, join up with other mayors in other cities, try to find a way to resolve these issues and advocate. We don't have to wait for the governor. We don't have to wait for Harrisburg. We can actually lead here from Pittsburgh in conjunction with others. So my criticism is not about his failure to sign. I do in fact believe that we need to work for gun control legislation. There are way too many guns available in way too many neighborhoods in this city, and they're doing way too much damage. We should be focused on that piece, and we should also be dedicated to the enforcement of those laws here in the city of Pittsburgh, both of which would require mayoral leadership.
Thank you. I see we have some rebuttal coming.
Yeah.
Who wants to start?
If I could,
Please, go ahead, Carmen.
just 30 seconds. Washington, D.C. bans all handguns, and New York has one of the strictest laws in regards to guns, and both of those two are in the top 10 of gun violence. Just want to tell you that. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, just want to respond to the councilman's words. Number one, I didn't sign the bill, and when you don't sign a bill, you're not required to communicate with city council, but I did communicate. So for him to suggest that we were silent is wrong. I'll resend the letter to you, Councilman, so you have an opportunity to look at it, in which I state I agree with city council on what they did. I think we need to have the ability locally to support gun ordinances, so I'll show you that. Leadership to me is consistency. And on Monday night at the debate, I pointed out Councilman Dowd's inconsistency on this issue. I've been consistent from day one. If you look at the transcripts, and I won't go through them again today like I did then, the whole week leading up to the vote, the councilman was against the ordinance. He even said it tonight, it doesn't go far enough, it's not a good ordinance. If I wanted to support this for political reasons, I would. It's actually somewhat comical to hear him now then come out on the other side of the issue a week later and vote for it. So to me, leadership is consistency. It's standing up when the times are tough. It's not taking one position when somebody's looking and then changing that position a week later. Guns is one time that he's done it, and I look forward to, over the next 4 weeks, talking about 3, 4, or 5 different cases when that took place as well.
All right, thank you. Leaving the questions of gun regulation aside, what would you like to see done to reverse the huge increase in black-on-black homicides in Pittsburgh, and deaths in general? Let's begin with, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. I think, number one, we have to work with the young folks in the African American community to give them opportunity and to give them hope. The reality is, and while police officers are important and they can be of assistance, it's an issue that goes much further than that and much deeper than that. And it's about intervening.
Can I ask you what kind of opportunities?
Yeah, sure. Number one, the Pittsburgh Promise. When you look at educational opportunities and giving these young people hope for a future, opportunities to gain summer employment. When I became the mayor in 2007, we hired 175 roughly young people. We upped it the next year to 270, and I'm happy to tell you that this summer, we'll have over 500 young people working in city government, in gainful employment over the summer, opportunity to participate in good positive activity, doing something with themselves over the summer, participating in the numerous recreational activities that we have in city government, from our Parks and Recreation Department that does a fine job in the opportunities. But back to the black-on-black crime issue, as you mentioned, it's about getting into the churches, it's about getting into the schools. We've been very aggressive in trying to work on a 52 Weeks of Peace campaign with the